Hello everyone, welcome to From the Star Wars Home Video Library. I'm your host Nathan P. Butler, and this is a different looking background than you're used to. Typically, when I record episodes of From the Star Wars Home Video Library, my camera is basically here. I'm sitting at my desk, kind of off to the edge, away from my work computer, sitting in a chair. So you see sort of a piece of this background here. This background, though, the way that I have the camera set up now, so you can see the Kylo Ren on the wall, the jersey here, and so on. This is the setup that I typically use for my exclusive Q&A videos for the Patreon, for the $10 tier, the Nobility of the Butlerniverse. Also, this is the backdrop that I will likely continue to use going forward now with more of those mini Q&A episodes for the non-Star Wars home video questions. Because I just got done recording a Nobility of the Butlerniverse Q&A video for the month of May, I decided that instead of changing the camera angle, I would stick with this for this From the Star Wars Home Video Library Q&A, number 6, to see what you think. Should this be the backdrop for episodes of the From the Star Wars Home Video Library Q&A episodes, so that, one, it looks a little different, but two, you also get a chance to very easily see if it's a Q&A episode by looking at the thumbnail? Or should I go back to doing these the normal way for me, which is the same format as From the Star Wars Home Video Library, sitting at the desk with the more limited backdrop behind me? It's up to you. I will show you here real quick what you're seeing behind me, and then we're going to dive into questions from the comments in Q&A number 5 for this Q&A number 6. We had a lot this time, so I'm not waiting too long to record. I want to try to knock some of these out. What you got there, that is a deco light of Kylo Ren. We've got the Buffalo Bisons, one of the Star Wars-based jersey things here. I used to do the voice of, I think among other characters, but definitely at least Palpatine, for the Buffalo Bisons minor league baseball team's Star Wars Knights, thanks to Brian Patrick Stoyle, who brought me in to do some voice work for that. Then you've got the main part of the collection here. There are some shelves that are the size of these black ones over here that you can't see. So usually, you know, you can see maybe the edge of that curtain. I have to protect my collection from a toddler, so whenever I'm not recording, there's a curtain that closes on them. So move that off to the side here. And then usually you see a little bit of this bit here, usually from just like, you know, here up. And then a little bit over on the other side, you'll see bits and pieces of those bigger black shelves. So let me step out of the way. Notice you can see down there the unraveled playpen, so to speak, that I used to block the lower sections from toddler grabbing. But yeah, that's what the collection looks like behind me. Up there on top, you've got some lightsabers that come with home video items, and then some comic packs. My comic pack from when I wrote for Star Wars Tales, plus the comic pack that has the Cade Skywalker figure in it, my son's namesake, older Kyle Katarn figure, Dr. Aphra figure, and just some various, you know, stuff like those Star Wars in-universe books that have the fancy packaging and whatnot. So, yeah, stuff up there on the top, but it's not home video related with the exception of the lightsabers that are up there. So what we're going to do this time is kind of like we did in the previous 5 of these. We are going to grab some questions, this time from the comments on Q&A number 5, and we're going to answer them here for Q&A number 6. There may be multiple recorded in this session, though, so bear in mind this is the, it's actually not even Boba Fett, it is the Cobb Vanth in Boba Fett armor shirt here, so you know which ones to ask questions on. Always, always, always think of these as rounds, where one round is in a particular shirt, the next round would be in a different shirt so you can tell the difference, and if you want questions answered in an upcoming round, you need to look at the newest Q&A video and look at that round's videos and put the comments in those. So for instance, after I do these videos here, or video, with the Cobb Vanth shirt, I will not be grabbing any more questions off of the comments from Q&A number 5 because I will already have used them. You'll need to put comments on this video or any other ones in this round with this shirt if you want questions answered in the next round. So first, we have 2 questions coming from Vintage VHS Treasures. Number 1, and I'll answer them separately. Number 1, why do you think the 1995 THX remastered editions of the original trilogy on VHS and Laserdisc in the US use the faces of Vader, a Stormtrooper, and Yoda for the individual covers, instead of the John Alvin artwork that was used on the foreign releases of the same year? I'm not 100% certain. I believe, if I'm understanding correctly though, kind of looking back on it, I've seen a little bit of discussion on this. I think there were separate sort of contracts from an artwork standpoint of what they were going to commission for the US versus international. It's thought of as US and international. and that international was where they made that contract with Alvin, not domestic. I think it was a domestic international contract thing. Why they didn't just have a full-fledged worldwide contract, that I don't know. I do know there was sort of a difference in the decision-making of Fox in different regions, though, because that was talked about in some of those the raygun.co.uk articles, which apparently are down now, that had talked about the development of the 1994 and 1995 releases from the UK. So I believe that was a domestic versus international rights thing, perhaps because of what entity within the broader company was making the contracts and handling the distribution in those regions. Then number 2, I noticed that all releases of The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi released on VHS and Laserdisc between 1992 and 1995 from Fox Video / 20th Century Fox Home Entertainment have the CBS Fox logo on the packaging and labels, while the 1992 to 1995 releases of A New Hope do not. Can you explain why that is? I would assume it has to do with, and I'm just assuming here, I would assume it has to do with the way the distribution contracts worked for those films. Remember, A New Hope was handled separately than everything else. That's why A New Hope would remain with physical releases and digital releases, all releases, in perpetuity with 20th Century Fox, despite the fact that the physical rights to Empire and Jedi were only sitting with Fox until 2020, and their other rights, like digital rights, could be sold off to someone like Disney separately and that sort of thing. Of course, it doesn't matter now that Disney purchased all those assets. But I would assume that that meant that there was some sort of separate track for A New Hope versus the other films. So that when CBS Fox Video was no longer the banner logo that all the CBS and Fox releases were going out under, when they separated it back out to CBS and Fox kind of be in their own thing, like, say, Fox Video, that the ones that were originally, that A New Hope being sort of separate, didn't have to still bear the CBS Fox Video logo. The other ones probably did. And the reason I mention that is that CBS Fox Video as a legal entity still existed until like around 2000, 2001-ish. It's just that they decided around 91-ish, 91, 92, that they were going to separate back out as far as what labels they put on stuff with CBS and Fox. So the entity still existed, it was just putting it out through two different names. That's probably where those come from. Again, this is me guessing based on what I know about sort of the company history behind it, but it's just very vague knowledge, not something I've delved into too much personally, beyond just the regular changing of labels over time. Then a question here from David Noche. He says, thanks for the answer to my question, Nathan. That is in the last one here about digital and physical collecting. I actually have a corollary to it. Regardless of whether you consider your digital library to be on par with your physical collection, or of whether some collections are more equal than others, per your commentary on the story group's treatment of gradations of canon, the question is, won't you be forced to eventually turn exclusively to digital collecting once they stop selling any physical media whatsoever? Well, of course, right? If there's nothing physical to get, I will be getting things digitally. Though again, it's a question of whether that counts as a collection or not. But yeah, I mean, eventually, if they're not doing physical releases, of course I'll be picking things up digitally. I think the bigger question there, the more interesting question here with that, and I don't have an answer for it, is kind of some of the stuff I talked about in some recent videos, which is, okay, sure, if there's no physical releases, we would go digital. But there are some things, say the exclusive shows for Disney Plus, that Disney isn't even releasing digitally outside of streaming through Disney Plus. You can't buy The Mandalorian, say, on iTunes, for example. And I would bet, again, if they had their druthers, so to speak, that maybe, just maybe, Disney would rather get away from any type of distribution at all for their stuff except for Disney Plus, even getting away from purchasable digital content. It's just that now people expect it, so it's kind of a slower transition away from that. But seeing things released digitally for streaming that never get digital release for purchase is already setting the stage for that. So it begs the question, by the time physical releases stop, will it even be possible for a lot of the Star Wars stuff to buy digitally either? Or will it simply be a matter of streaming? Which again goes back to that question, if all you're doing is paying for a streaming service, is that collecting? Which of course is a bigger, perhaps even more no-leaning question than if the question asked is whether we're talking about whether digital purchases can be collected. Yeah, I mean, I don't know that there is an easy answer for this because it all comes down to whether an individual collector thinks digital collecting is a thing or not, and what defines that and that sort of thing. Physical, definitely. But digital, is that even a thing or not? Does it require downloading? Does it require being able to constantly have access to it? Do they have to change the terms of service to not allow them to change things or remove things, etc., etc.? There's a lot of questions involved in that, and that is a new territory for collecting that really hasn't been fully explored because, at least for right now, we do still have those physical releases from time to time. The next question comes from Patrick Connor Entertainment, who asks, "Hey, Nathan P. Butler, did the Star Wars sequel trilogy get a trilogy set release on DVD, Blu-ray, or 4K yet?" Yes. Depends on where you look, though. Okay, this is the subject of a recent episode. This is one of the three subjects, three trilogy sets, of a recent episode here from the Star Wars Home Video Library. I actually just recorded it right before recording the Nobility of the Learniverse Q&A episode for May and this Q&A episode for From the Star Wars Home Video Library. We'll be looking at these in that episode if it's not released yet. I'm guessing it'll be released slightly before this comes out. But in France, yes. There are multiple different versions. This is the highest end version, the 4K/Blu-ray/Blu-ray bonus disc version. You can find Blu-ray and DVD versions of the sets in the UK. There are some releases in Japan. In Australia, there's some unusual releases that we will eventually wind up looking at where basically it's just the film discs from each format as 3-disc sets. So there's a 4K set, a Blu-ray set, a DVD set, each 3 discs each for each trilogy. So we see those as well. But yes, as of April/May, depending on your region of 2022, there are some regions that are finally getting not only new boxed sets of the original and prequel trilogies, but finally the first box sets of the sequel trilogy. That said, that is not the case in the United States. Over here, it would appear that Disney, at least according to what they told the Digital Bits, they have no interest, no plans whatsoever for a release of this new round of product into the US at all. None. So our only options will be to import. I have not got any of the DVD ones in my hands. My guess would be they'll be region 0 but PAL. But as far as the Blu-rays, they're all region-free. And as far as the 4K discs, of course, region-free. It's very rare for there to be region locking on 4K discs. So, if you were to want to import, this is a really nice package to import. Nice and sturdy, nice looking. This particular one is from the UK, though. The Ultra HD/Blu-ray/Blu-ray bonus disc version is something you can get out of a place like France. This version, with this particular content, doesn't exist, for instance, in the UK. There isn't going to be, apparently, an English language version of this that you can find when it comes to the packaging languages for things like the titles. For whatever reason, a 4K/Blu-ray set is not in the cards for the UK, which doesn't make a whole hell of a lot of sense to me. The next one comes from Daniel Muppet Boy, who asks, "What do you think is or are the most interesting and your favorite unique international video releases of the Star Wars films?" Well, I gotta say, as I grab them here from just recording, I really, really like these new ones here. They are still the same discs that we saw in 2020, but they are really nice, much more compact than having the Skywalker Saga box set sitting on your shelves. I also really like the matching steelbook set of all 11 live-action films that came from Zavvi in the UK recently. I am a fan, or at least somewhat of someone who has a tendency to lean towards the things we didn't get in the US, just because they're kind of different and cool, like Video 2000 or the Video 8s that are taking up just a teeny tiny bit of space up there because they're so freaking small, or VHD, like we didn't get over here. Let's see, if there's a favorite, I mean, I really do like, if we're talking about just like the look and how fancy they look or how nice they look, I am definitely partial to the one-click Blue Fans sets. Unfortunately, they only did them for the first 3 of the Disney-era films. I am partial to the big sleeve editions that look like big LPs, but again, they only did those for the same 3 films. Then, of course, as far as box sets, we have the one that I talked about, I think, in one of the recent episodes, which was that Executor set, the Definitive Collection VHS set from the UK from 1995, which unfortunately right now is tough to get to behind the, behind the little baby gate there and some other stuff over here blocking the way. Those are on the bottom shelves covered up by blankets to keep things that are dropped behind there from getting on them. So kind of tough to get to at this point, but those would be ones that really kind of stand out to me. I'm also partial, again, to stuff that we didn't get, like the VHS release of Revenge of the Sith from pretty much anywhere, because, of course, the US didn't get something like that. But yeah, I do find that I am fairly partial to just a nicer presentation, even if it's the same stuff we've seen over here. Another example of that nicer presentation would be that Japanese version, that's the UK version there, but the Japanese version of the Skywalker Saga box set with the 4K discs, where they left out the Blu-ray film discs and just put in the Blu-ray bonus discs, but had a different sort of nicer presentation of that than what we got in the US, or, you know, that the UK got and things like that. So those are probably the ones that stand out to me mostly. Though I guess I would also throw in there those Japanese releases recently that include the 4K disc, the Blu-ray disc, and the 3D disc, and the Blu-ray bonus disc if there is one. I think that's kind of a nice package as well, but I don't know that I would, just looking at them on the shelf, think, these are really nice, I really like these for their design. It's more just because it includes a 3D disc with everything else, so I think that's probably a little bit aside from what this release, what this list, excuse me, of releases would entail. The next question comes from Brian Sales, who asks, is HD DVD the only home video format that Star Wars was never released on? Thanks. Depends on where you're looking, but that is of all, I mean, there's all kinds of minor formats and whatnot. Like, you could watch, like, essentially what was sort of an early, I forget what the name of it is, like a high-def version of, like, a VHS cassette that just didn't exist for very long in certain markets and things like that. Of course, you know, if you look at the United States, you know, we didn't see any releases of Star Wars stuff on Video 8, but it happened in the UK and Japan. In the US, we didn't see a release of a Star Wars film on UMD, but the Clone Wars film got released on UMD in the UK. So there are some, you know, things where it's not existing in the United States that it might exist elsewhere. There are also instances of minor formats that really didn't hit it for home video in general anyway, in a big way, that just doesn't get that kind of attention. But of the major media formats, since '82, when we started seeing Star Wars films being released in full on home video, yeah, I would say that HD DVD is the one that stands out as the one that did not get Star Wars releases. And we might have gotten it, you know, had timing been slightly different for the release of the Clone Wars, but by then, you know, writing was on the wall already, and Clone Wars only released on Blu-ray for the film. And then, of course, the other films didn't even hit high definition, at least for home media release, until 3 years later, by which time HD DVD was, like, already, you know, kind of in its grave at that point. For those wondering, by the way, I do still touch on the idea of HD DVD and that particular short second big format war in A Saga on Home Video Volume 1 of the second edition, but the comparison shot that I use is Superman the movie because there are no Star Wars releases to do a comparison shot of. Continuing, I think we may actually get this in one episode. We only have 2 more questions left. We have this question, I almost said quote, this question coming in from Jamie Bisson, who asks, what do you know about an early Betamax version of A New Hope that was released without the Episode 4 A New Hope at the beginning? This has to exist since it came from an official source, the trivia track that accompanies the Amazon release of the bonus features that accompanied the digital release of Episode 4. I've never heard you address this. That is because I do not believe it actually exists. The Amazon trivia tracks are not without their flaws from time to time. Sometimes they have erroneous information. Heck, sometimes official commentary tracks wind up having erroneous information depending on who it is that's talking about something and what they're talking about. If there is a Betamax copy of A New Hope floating around out there with no subtitle on it, I have never heard of such a thing actually existing. Unless we are talking about an early screener of the film, perhaps, I don't see how it could or would exist. The reason for that, of course, being that by the time we saw full releases of A New Hope on any home media formats in '82, by that time, the subtitle was already in place, it was already kind of ingrained, it was what the film was. And across the board, now I don't have a beta player, I can't check any of my beta copies. But I've never heard of, for instance, the video rental copy, or the 1982 original release on beta, any of those lacking the subtitle, lacking the episode number. To my knowledge, they're all coming from the same masters, which is why they also have the same audio issues in general. So yeah, I have yet to ever be convinced that such a thing would have existed. I think it's probably an error in the commentary track. It's probably somebody getting confused, kind of the same way that people will go on eBay and try to sell a 1982 copy of the film, but label the year of release as 1977 because that was the release of the film, not the release of that home video item. But yeah, I would have to see some actual evidence beyond just that commentary track or the trivia track to actually believe that would be the case. It certainly would not have been a retail release unless there is something very odd about a particular market's retail. Now, it could be a particular market. Maybe they used a different master in a different market somewhere that happened to use an earlier master of the film, but I've never heard of such a thing or seen it, well, I've never seen such a thing confirmed. I've heard that same rumor before once or twice, but I've yet to see anything to actually back it up. So this falls under the, when it comes to internet stuff, PPOR, right? Post proof or retract. Somebody wants to make that claim, they need to actually provide some proof that it's actually legit because all other existing evidence points against it. Rhett Fox asks, "Hi Nathan, I purchased a sealed collector's box set of The Rise of Skywalker, the one with the badges and whatnot inside. I had planned to keep this sealed in the hope to retain its value. However, there's a rattling inside the box, which appears to be something loose. Would you be inclined to leave it sealed or open it to secure whatever is rattling? I'm interested in maintaining value as a Star Wars collector." So he says, like, collector badges and just Rise of Skywalker. I'm assuming what he's meaning is one of these, right? The ones from Zavvi in the UK, right? So my guess would be something on the inside is just like sort of fallen out of its place. Would explain the rattling, but there's no way to tell what it is, right? Could be one of the badges. Could be that it's the moving around of the little art cards in it, if they're not secured properly. It could be a disc popped out of its slot inside the steelbook, which happens a lot, to sort of bang around whenever you're rattling the thing. Honestly, I don't know what to tell you when it comes to the approach to take. Generally speaking, someone who is a collector is going to want it to be in nice shape. But there is a subset of collectors for whom sealed, even if it rattles, sealed, presuming good shape, is going to wind up being worth spending more money on it. So my suggestion would be that you don't want something rattling around in there because you don't want it to damage, right? Or you don't want it to turn out that there is damage inside it. I think the likelihood that there is damage is relatively unlikely as long as you haven't been constantly slamming it around or anything. I think you'd be safe probably leaving it sealed, but just not moving it around very much to let it sort of sit so that whatever is moving around inside loose isn't going to get further damaged or anything like that. If your concern is for the content condition inside, you're going to have to open it. And I don't think it's going to make that big a difference in several years down the road whether or not you have opened it when it comes to what the value would be. But if there is anything that would determine and shift it just a little at least, the seal aspect would be what would do it. So it's kind of like, you know, which is more important? The little bit of extra boost in profit you might get if you kept it sealed and then sold it later, even to someone who doesn't care about the rattling. Or the peace of mind of being able to make sure the stuff inside is not damaged or getting damaged so that you can make sure that it is in very good condition if you want to eventually sell it later. It's a no-win type of scenario. If it were me, I would open it, check it, and make sure that everything is in good shape. Because what I wouldn't want to do is sell something as sealed, have somebody open it expecting the fact that it's sealed means that it's awesome and there's something damaged on the inside, and then I've got to go through the whole hassle of refunding and all that kind of stuff if I try to sell it. To me, it's worth the peace. The peace of mind is worth the little bit of profit I would lose in trying to, open it up to check and not having it sealed anymore. That said, I'm also the guy that generally doesn't sell off my stuff for profit. I don't see these as investments for profit later to me. So your mileage will certainly vary. It's a matter of personal preference. Oh, and it looks like I did miss one. I'm sorry. We'll do this one last. This one is James Lawner, who asks, what's the one Star Wars home video related product you still haven't found yet? Well, if there is a Harrison Ford AFI VHS set, that would be big on the list, I would say. Being able to get my hands on one of the home video premiere launch party New York things where it's like a lunchbox with an action figure, and the back of the action figure on its card has information about the DVD launch event that was exclusive, and like having that with you was the ticket in the door. Getting one of these would be a big thing, except The only one I'm seeing on eBay is still sitting there at an asking price of $1,500, and none of my multi-hundreds of dollars offers have ever been accepted for that, though I haven't made any in a very long time. So there's that. I would say getting the rest of the Video 8 releases from the UK, that'd be a big thing for me. Getting the rest of the Video 2000 releases from the UK, that would be a big thing for me. I would also love to get my hands on a widescreen / scope A New Hope Super 8 reel. There's the one that's got the Tom Young artwork on it. There's two versions of that. There's a scope version that's widescreen. There's a regular version. I've got the regular version. It's relatively common, not as much as the Chewy Han cover ones, but it's relatively common. I've never seen a scope one in the wild to be able to actually acquire it. So that would be a cool one to pick up as well. Beyond that, there's plenty of stuff that I could acquire that are intriguing. I just have never taken the time to do it. And it's not like they'd be particularly hard to do. Like getting all the behind-the-scenes Laserdiscs in their original releases from Japan would be nice. More Japanese releases on different formats would be nice, because I kind of like those. I mean, there's other stuff. There's always sort of broadening the horizons outside the U.S. and that sort of thing. But, you know, by and large, generally speaking, I'm pretty cool with what I've got now. There are just some very almost impossible to find outliers out there that'd be really nice to have. Though I think a lot of my impulse to hunt those things down is tempered by the fact that, you know, and I look over to the desk thinking it's still there, but it's not. Tempered by the fact that a Saga on Home Video 2nd Edition is already out. It's not like for instance, that whole $1,500 special figure for the DVD release thing. I would have been willing to plunk down more to actually acquire that from that seller when I make the offer through eBay. I would have been willing to spend more had I been able to get it in time to put into the book. Now that the book is already out, my willingness to spend on that has significantly decreased. I'd still love to have it. I'd still probably pay at least a couple hundred for it. But would I pay nearly as much as I offered before? No, because the book's already out. The ship has sailed on one of the places I would have loved to have featured it, but couldn't. So it is a shifting thing. I'd also like to get releases from Russia. Legitimate releases from Russia, but that is a complete pain in the ass with the sheer bootlegging nature and scam nature of many of the things we're seeing from that particular region. So I've almost given up on actually getting legitimate Russian releases outside of the one copy of Phantom Menace that I have that is from Russia. So with that is the last question. Almost missed it. Little one-line question as I was scrolling there, but thankfully I did catch it. With that is the last of our questions here. This will wrap up our Q&A episode. Again, if you want to ask any questions for the next Q&A episode, we got this all done for this round in one shot. So on this episode, with the Cobb Vanth shirt, this is where to put your comments for the next one of these. This is number 6. That'll be questions for number 7. Drop them in the comments. If you want me to answer them in the comments, you need to specifically tell me. Otherwise, I will assume you want me to hold it for the next Q&A episode here of the show. Beyond that, also, again, feel free to drop your opinions in the comments when I do these from the Star Wars Home Video Library Q&A episodes. Should I do them like I do the normal episodes, like the last 5, sitting at the desk? Or should I do them with this backdrop, standing, a little less formal, but I am bobbing and weaving and moving around and everything, like I do for the Nobility of the Butler Numbers Q&As and those mini Q&A episodes? Should this be the regular format for From the Star Wars Home Video Library Q&A episodes as well? You tell me. Doesn't really matter in my case. I just decided to keep it like this and give you a chance to at least see the other option here for this one. So with that, we'll wrap up this episode. Thank you for watching, and may the Force be with the home video viewers.